Have you heard what happened to me?
No, so let's get started because I shouldn't say I didn't hear. I read what you had. As far as your little post you had on Facebook. Hold on a
Yeah.
second. Yeah, that was some crazy deal, man. So you ended up, well, you go ahead and explain it.
Well, so for those that don't know, I went to South Dakota fishing NWT. This will be the third one I've fished. And first off, the weather was brutal, but everybody's got to fish in it. But it was really tough to try to learn a new system when the wind was blowing on a good day 25 and pretty much every day 40 plus. Like, no exaggeration either. I mean, it was horrible. So last year the NWT had a tournament in the same body of water, same exact date. So the Chase Parsons won it, and a lot of guys, they were not hiding what they did. It was very easy to figure out where they were fishing. I did. A lot of people did. And it was a long run downriver. And I did catch my biggest fish down there, but it was like a 50-mile run. And
I was just going to say, tell people how long it is. Because, I mean, when you say a long run, that could be relative to what some people are running.
So we launched out of really cool area. I guess I didn't get to enjoy the beauty of South Dakota, but it launched out of Chamberlain, out of this really nice resort. And you could go upriver probably 10 miles to the dam, or you could go downriver. I think it was about 80 miles to the other dam. And like I say, they televised last year's tournament, and it was pretty easy to figure out where those guys were fishing last year. And I did. And of course, I went in there, and I did catch my biggest fish right where Tommy Kimos. They show him casting in that clip. And like I say, it wasn't hard to find. And I was not the only one that found it. And I caught the biggest fish I caught in a week fishing there was embarrassingly a 21 and a half incher. But there were a ton of small fish, but it was like a 3.5 pounder. But I was pulling a planer board in this shallow bay, and I thought to myself, look, these guys are going to be casting. I don't want to be that guy that's out there pulling boards in a bay. And it was a fairly big bay, but I didn't want to be that guy that was out there doing that when there were 7-8 boats casting, which is what I was expecting. I don't know what, the weather looked terrible to even make that run, but I'll say this, both days, especially in the morning, there was a break of no wind. So those guys that made the run were smiling, I can promise you.
Yeah,
and then the day one of that tournament was beautiful. It was the best day that I had seen since I'd been there. And I spent a lot of time trying to learn this south end of the Missouri River. And like I say, with those conditions, you couldn't really fish the main river. You had to go into these bays. And everybody was in these bays. So there's one bay called the Platte Arm. The first day I pulled in there, every tournament boat I know who the guys are, most of them. Plus every other obvious tournament boat was in this Platte Bay. There were probably 50 boats in this bay that went back it may go back a half mile, 3/4 mile, but there were boats everywhere. And that was a 60-mile run to get to that bay. So I'm like, wow, this must be worth it. And from what I saw, I saw some small 16-inch or smaller fish in there. I'm like, okay, well, either I'm just not figuring it out or it's a different year. So on Monday, my cousin from Devil's Lake came up so we could have a couple extra lines out. And I made a crank run on one little half-mile stretch. I got a 21, a 19 and a half, a 19, and an 18. I'm like, okay, good. I don't have to go run down south and have every pro hate me, right? Because I'm pulling boards. So I could not get a casting bite going. I will not lie. Couldn't get it going. But I got a board bite going. Nice fish. So when I got that crank run dialed in on Monday, like I say, one pass, and I had great fish for that tournament, I said, okay, that's good. So I spent the next 2 days upriver, caught a lot of fish upriver, but they were mostly 15 to 16 and a half inches. And the minimum there is 15. So they weren't good fish. And so I'm like, all right, cool. This crank run that there was not a boat on when I pre-fished it. I figured, okay, that's my plan A. And man, my co-angler, the crazy part was at the driver's meeting, we get drawn together and we both had Kit's tackle sweaters on. So I'm like, okay, this is meant to be. And I told him, I said, well, unfortunately, we're not going to be casting. I couldn't get that figured out. And but we had a great day, man. We caught around 30 fish, and we had in our bag 3 fish that were perfect, a 19 and 3/4, a 19 and a half, and like a 19 and a half or a quarter. But they were fat. They were actually fatter than fish I'd caught all week. And then we had, unfortunately, 2 like 17-inch saugers in our bag. Those generally are like 1.5 pound fish. But I had I was only 1 pound out of the check on day 1. And those 3 19 to 20s that I caught were in a small stretch. So I'm like, okay, I need to work that area. So day 2, I pull in there, make 1 pass. We caught a nice 18 and a half, and some dinks pulled through there, but legal ones, but you're not going to keep them in no call. Made another pass, got another nice 2.5 pounder. And then an alarm goes off, and I got 90 hours on my new boat. And of course, day 2, that happens. And I just found out today what it is. I lost oil pressure. I knew oil pump went bad.
Really?
So yeah, just timing on that. Just all you can do is shake your head. I will say this: I learned a lesson. Like if I would have, and you wouldn't think about this, but I didn't. A new boat, but I do now. I'll always carry at least 1 quart of oil, because my oil pump, when it failed, it leaked out enough oil to put it in that limp mode and not allow me to do anything other than idle. And we had 60-mile-an-hour winds blow in right when that all happened. Couldn't believe the timing of it, because what actually happened is the wind picked up. We made 2 passes, and I was starting the 3rd pass, and this wind kicked up, and I couldn't use my kicker anymore. I had to use my big motor. And after about 5 minutes, that alarm hit me, and it was right when that windstorm came in. And I don't know if you've heard, but there were 2 boats that were totaled. There was an accident. Luckily, nobody was killed, but it was a very bad accident that luckily happened next to a boat launch, where the camera boat hit one of the tournament boats. And
no kidding, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, the co-angler, he got really messed up, broken leg, broken ribs. Luckily, Jake Lapine, who was the pro, he had his kill switch on, and if he wouldn't have, then you would have heard about it. So props to him and those guys for man, that thing is there for a reason, and you would never expect in a tournament like this for something like that to happen, but it did.
So do you know the details of it? I mean, was it just they couldn't see each other, or what?
Yeah, the details I heard, of course, there's always multiple stories, but he was coming into a bay, and I believe it might have been that bay I was talking about. I don't know, but it probably was Platte. It was either Platte or Snake, because they're the only 2 bays that have boat launches. And he was coming into that bay during the storm, and the camera boat wasn't moving. And then all of a sudden, apparently they were packing up gear, and they just gave her and went right into the side of them. So, yeah, I mean, unfortunate, but from what I heard is they hire local boats to be the camera boats to follow people around. So, But from everything I heard, it was definitely not the tournament guy's fault. Who knows what's going to happen? But luckily, man, nobody was killed because,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he had a 22-foot Cayman, brand new, and it obviously when it T-boned him, I think at the last second he slowed down and turned to the right, and that pushed the other boat a little bit further forward instead of direct impact on the co-angler, which I'm sure would have killed him.
Yeah.
But he definitely broke his leg and had all kinds of other injuries. And from what I heard, the cameraman went through the windshield of the other boat. So yeah, man, that was terrible. But when all that was going on, I had no main power, and I was getting pushed into the west shoreline. I couldn't control my boat with the kicker, and the wind was coming right across the river. So I had to go straight into the waves, and every wave was going over my bow. And I got a big boat. These were serious. These were Umatilla waves, right. And it was a 60-mile-an-hour wind and hail, and so I kind of had to zigzag my way out to get away from shore. Otherwise, my boat would have been totaled, and my day was done. Yeah, 2 hours into it.
So you had to limp back all the way to the launch, or did you just go to the one that was closest?
We've spent about 2.5 hours just getting away from shore, like zigzagging myself and trying to get out of that wind, and I kept trying. The whole time I'm trying to figure out what's going on, right? So constantly starting it, and it would go into this critical alarm, and I'm like, what the heck? And then I eventually, later into the day, found out that if I just started it, put it in gear, and drove it slowly, it wouldn't alarm because it lost so much oil at idle. It wasn't building enough pressure. So at the end of the day, it actually got completely flat again. So those guys that ran got to run back in flatness. So once I figured that out, I went in, and I didn't dare touch the throttle because I'm like, okay, everything's fine. But obviously, as soon as I got into the launch and went back to idle, it was nonstop alarming. So it was just a horrible, day two for me because I was in the right spot. Tournament was one where I was at. That's what really kicks my, because I found the right area and just had some unfortunate circumstances happen. Not saying I would have won it, but I really felt like I was going to cash because there were some real thick fish there.
I mean, I was watching the weigh-in on Friday, and I mean, you were right there. It's not like there was a big gap. I mean, most of the weights were in between that 11 to, well, let's say 8 to 11 pounds, and then the ones that were up in 14, 16.
Yeah, and you can compare that tournament to Kettle Falls. You're looking for a big fish, and it it'll skyrocket you up because obviously there's some big fish in there. A guy caught an 11-pounder on day one, and so I was just hoping for them 3 or 4 of those 19s and maybe hit a 24 plus, and I would have been right up there. I was so excited for day 2. I mean, everything felt right, and that happened. So pretty frustrating. It made the drive home pretty grueling. And
I can imagine.
But I don't know what to say about it other than, I'm sure it happens to, it happens to everybody when you have bad timing with it's just unfortunate that it was one of the big tournaments that I try to do one of these every couple of years and use all my vacation to go do it. And just to be on the bad side of, I guess, mechanical failure, that sucks.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, you're out there and would you spend 2 weeks there?
No, actually I went and visited my mom in North Dakota for a few days. I actually was in South Dakota for, I think, 7 days, but there were a couple of days where nobody went out there. And I can promise you, nobody went out on Saturday and Sunday before the tournament. I went out Saturday. I saw one other boat. I didn't go out Sunday. It was just too much. And I wasn't learning anything. I'll say this: if I would have went out that day, maybe I would have broke down a day earlier, and I could have addressed the situation. But who knows?
Yeah,
But
you don't know.
but yeah, it was. So I had time to figure out what I figured out, But sometimes it just wasn't meant to be, and yeah, that was a swift kick right there. But it
That's a
was
gut
fun.
punch, man.
Oh yeah, I've had plenty of those. But if they ever go back to Chamberlain, I will go back for sure, because I put my time in and I earned my stripes, and it owes me.
Yeah, I say that every year about Moses Lake, but it doesn't help me when I say that.
Yeah, well, I saw that. I was keeping an eye on that on my drive back. I saw you were right up there on the first day, so I guess now you can talk about your failures.
Well, what's crazy is, okay, so let's back up some, because Moses Lake, obviously that tournament's been around since what, 91, 92, right? I think that was the first year they had it. And the first year, Larry Elstead won that, and I think he only had like 2 or 3 fish, right? And there wasn't that many boats that were in it, but it was one of those things where I think back as far as time wise, and I've heard a lot of people for this tournament say, well, the fishing's terrible, all the walleye are gone, this and that and the other. Well, let's say 30 years ago, there wasn't a lot of people that were fishing for walleye on Moses Lake, and you didn't find a ton of fish. You found big fish, but you wouldn't go out and catch 30, 40 fish in a day. So, Larry wins it that first year with a couple fish. And at that point in time, my dad and I were just kind of getting into the whole tournament thing. And, he had a 1974 15-foot tri-hull fiberform with a 70 horse. So the next year, we jump in, we're going to fish it. And, we didn't do great. But then, you fast forward a few years, and like I said, it seems like all the fish that you were catching were 3, 5, 8 pound fish, right? But you didn't get a lot of them. So this year, of course, with the tournament being earlier and the weather that we've had really screwed things up. It's no different than probably anywhere else. I mean, you get a warm day and then you get a cold day. You get all these cold fronts moving in. That seemed like the spawn was later this year. A lot of the fish, it seemed like, and this is something I'll say, I put a camera down up at the Phil 2 weeks ago. Well, it would have been 2 weeks ago from the tournament date. And that place was nothing but a ball of walleye. I mean, It was just a solid wall.
You mean at the fountain?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they were just stacked in there. They wouldn't bite. I mean, I threw everything I could. I think I got 2 fish out of there. But you could throw a drop shot down and work it back. And as you were lifting it up to the boat, you'd have 5 or 6 walleye follow it up. They wouldn't bite. They would follow it up close enough where you could almost net them. So Friday before the tournament, I go back over there and drop the camera down. Not nearly as many fish, but there were some walleye in there. So same thing. You couldn't get them to bite. So Saturday morning, we made the decision to go ahead and run up there, just to see what we could do. I know there's fish in there. And we pull in. We're the second boat in there. I think Matt Brown beat us there. So we're both kind of fishing that area. They're casting, we're casting. I even threw a spinner out on a planer board, just holding it in the current. Couldn't get a bite. We stayed there for about 35, 40 minutes. Said, all right, we're out of here. So we headed up north, and most of the boats were up in that 4, 5, 6 foot range. And so we backed out into that 7 to 8 foot, started there, pulling planer boards and crankbaits. I was just figure eighting that all the way down to where you get into 10 feet of water and just circling back. And, we only got 4 fish. We lost a couple, but, the 4 fish were decent fish. And, it was cold. It was rainy. We worked for those 4 fish. Figured Sunday we'd go right back up there. And of course, Sunday, everybody seemed to head north. I mean, there must have been at least 2/3 of the field up there, but they were, again, way up north. So Sunday's sunny. flat, completely different than Saturday. And so we're pulling around, and well, actually, we get it to the spot where we had catching them on Saturday, threw the boards out, and within 5 minutes, I had a fish. I'm like, okay, cool. It's going to be a good day. We didn't boat a fish the rest of the day.
Brutal.
I mean, yeah, we trolled out into deeper water. We trolled into shallower water. I mean, we moved probably 4 or 5 times. And, we weren't the only ones. I mean, you look at let's say over the last 10 years, right? So Moses Lake usually takes 20 to 25 pounds a day.
Right.
So you're in that 45 to 50 pound range to win. And, the winner, Dave Harrell, back to back,
Yep.
whatever he's got the secret on Moses, he's got it figured out. But it's just, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah. I can't say I'm upset that I missed it. I actually am, but it sounded brutal.
Yeah.
I like to think that there were some things I could have done and tried out there, but usually, I remember one year I got onto a suspended bite out there that has not duplicated itself. And I like to think that maybe since there were no weeds this year, that maybe those, I really have any idea. Do you think maybe the fish were just out suspended, or were they shallower than anybody was fishing? Or what do you, now reflecting on it, what do you think?
The crazy thing is that I spent quite a bit of time pre-fishing, right? And I threw everything I could think of. I mean, I threw swim baits in 2 to 3 feet of water. And, I was looking for weeds because I figured if I could find patches of weeds, maybe that would be holding fish up in the shallows. South end, north end, Cascade Valley. The thing about the valley was because the water that was still coming in and the cooler spring, the water was a lot cooler than what it usually is. So if you were right up at the fill, it was right around that 47 to 49. But if you went south or north, you could find water that was anywhere between 56 to 59 degrees. But again, you would cruise along and it's just the weed growth isn't there because we haven't had the warmer temperatures to warm the water up and get the weed growth.
Even like over by, like one of my most favorite day before the tournament, I'll catch nice fish spots, and not during the tournament, is the lighthouse. Were there weeds over there at all?
No, just a few. There was a couple places where, we found a few weed patches. It would be just a little bit further east than the lighthouse. Where that little marsh island comes out. I mean, I would idle through areas just looking for good weed patches, and there just wasn't much there. I don't know where Dave was fishing. There was a few boats that were a little bit further south than Conley Park, out in some of that 20 to 25 foot. And I don't know if that was him, but we even tried that. Sunday about probably 10:30. I said, hey, let's back out into some deeper water just to see maybe if they pushed out there because there's no cover up shallow. Right. And so we slowed down. We threw spinners at them, walkers and spinners, and did that for about an hour. Couldn't get a freaking bite. So, I mean, I threw everything. I was throwing jerk baits up in the shallows. I was throwing jerk baits up in the current, jigs. Geez, I don't know. I could have emptied my tackle box and I couldn't find a good pattern. And that was the thing. I was just telling my partners the fact that, it's one thing when you go out and you're catching fish and you can kind of set up a pattern and it fails on you. Okay. It is what it is. But to not even be able to come up with a pattern, I told him on Saturday, I said, I don't know what to do. I said, it's one of those things where we made the decision as we were blasting off. Because I told him, I said, let's see which direction boats are going. And that'll be the deciding factor on where we start.
All right.
There was only one boat that went south, so we took off. And of course, we got passed. But there was only 2 boats that went our direction. So,
yeah.
It's like,
yeah. Well, Dave, last year we actually, Dan and I I think we got fourth last year. And I think we had like a 22 pound on day one and then a decent day two. But Dave won it last year, and he definitely knows that water. So I wasn't at all surprised to see that he won it again. But I was surprised seeing the weights being as low as they were.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, granted, there was only, what do we have, 28 teams. So that was way down. I mean, usually that's one of the bigger tournaments, at least holding anywhere between 50 to 60 boats. So, not getting a whole lot of boats. There was not a lot of fish weighed in. I mean, there was a ton of, 1 to 3 fish that came in.
Right. I heard there were a lot of guys that just backed out and that's frustrating for the tournament directors and stuff because, you try, I know the whole premise behind this was to try to get out of the hot June weather. And sometimes, Mother Nature just doesn't play happily with you. And from what it sounded like, there were a few guys that just weren't catching any pre-fish. And I know James Merith, I talked to him because I saw he was in second or third after the first day. Yeah. So I called him on the drive back and I said, nice job. I think you got big fish, him and Justin Lindquist. And I said, yeah, man, good job. Congrats. Good luck tomorrow. And he said, I wasn't even going to fish it because he said he caught 1 fish in 2 days pre-fishing, but you're there. So, why not? I know that tough bites suck, but I'm glad that he stuck it out, and I think they got third, and he got rate fourth. Yeah. So, yeah, those bites aren't fun for anybody.
No, it makes it tough. I mean, you go out on a Sunday like that, and of course, it was warmer than Saturday and sun shining, and you're racking your brain trying to figure out something to pull a fish in the boat, and right. You spend all day not catching, and that's the frustrating part is because you're sitting there second guessing about everything you're doing, and where should I go? What should I be using? It's tough, but at the same time, it's a learning experience. Like you said, they moved the tournament. It was a lot earlier this year. And was that a reflection of the bite at that time of year? Not usually. I think just because it's been kind of an unusual spring. Normally it's that first part of May, end of April. Moses is hot.
Yeah. Well, lucky for us, huh?
Yeah.
So let's talk about potholes. I've never done that well at potholes, but ironically, it's one of my most favorite places to fish. What do I need to do this year to not finish in the bottom of the group? Because I'm always way in the back. What do I need to do differently this year?
I wish I had the secret for you. Again, that one's getting moved. It's a little bit later than it usually is.
Is it later?
Yeah, it's a little later.
So normally
it's
it would have
been
been when Moses was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's about 2 weeks later. The only good thing is that it looks like the water level should be up because it's rising. Every week it's coming up about half a foot to a foot, and it's only like 2.8 below full pool. So that's going to be good.
So educate me. Typically, that tournament is won by somebody that finds a nice pocket of fish somewhere back in the dunes. That's not a secret, right? I know Mark Olson, him and his wife, they won a few of them back before everybody found all their little. I've heard that there was a time when people didn't explore back there, but now it seems like if you can find one of these pockets that's loaded with fish, do you think that's not going to be the case this time because we're later?
It will be. It will be.
So I still got to go try and not get stuck on a dune, which I've pretty much done every year. I get stuck somewhere back there.
Well, just go fast enough. You got a 400 now. You'll just blow right through it. So
I don't think I'm taking that boat. I think I'm going to let
You know?
Dan. I'm going to let Dan navigate, because I will get. I end up sticking that thing on a dune somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that a big boat's necessary for that tournament. You know.
I'll say yes and no. It depends on where you're running to. If you can hug into the dunes, if it's real windy, you'll be fine. But I mean, there's been times we've been out on potholes and the winds come up, and that place can get nasty depending on which way the wind's blowing. So.
Oh yeah, that can definitely happen. I'm just thinking that having a smaller, lighter boat back in the dunes is probably, at least you can get out and jump in your skivvies and push it, which I've done multiple times on potholes.
Yeah.
Every year, I end up jumping out of my boat and having to push. So, and I'm not the only one. I've seen plenty of other guys doing it too. So it's not just my stupidity. It happens out there.
And like I said, with the water being up, it's going to help some, because, you're able to get back into those spots where you couldn't necessarily last year. Like I told you, there was I like to get into that I couldn't get into last year, or even if I could get into, they just weren't holding the fish because, the water was down. You know what they say too, you got water level that's rising, usually pushes the fish a little shallower. If it's dropping, then they usually tend to drop off into, some of the deeper pools and things like that. So I think as long as that continues to rise, you should be able to find them up in the shallows. You're going to, and again, I haven't been on potholes this year, so I don't know what to tell you, because it's kind of like being out on Moses. A lot of times I'm looking for pockets that are holding that green cabbage weed. I don't know what the weed growth is out there. So I'm kind of going in saying, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Hopefully I can find it. And hopefully it's in the areas that I found them in before. I've got a couple spots out there that I really like to hit, but I was hoping to get out this weekend. It's looking like it's not going to be real favorable for that. So.
Oh, good. Because I got to work this weekend, make up for my travels. So I'm glad to hear that it's not going to be favorable.
Yeah. Well, and it's always one of those things where you almost feel like you've got these spots, but then you almost have to go out and start from scratch. It's kind of like we talked about before. You go through, you're using your sonar, you're trying to find things, you're using your eyes. And speaking of something else, this is something that kind of came up, I don't know how much you've ever done this. If you come into an area where you've got some real clear water, of course you got your sonar, but in areas like potholes, sometimes the sonar is kind of difficult to use because there's so many trees, so many bushes, things like that. And it's hard for that sonar to penetrate and be able to see what you're looking for. So if you've got clear water, one thing I like to do is I like to get up high, go through real slow, and you're basically sight fishing walleye for bass, or like you would for bass for walleye.
Right.
And, that was something that we've done in the past out there at potholes, because, if you can find them, they're pretty easy to spot.
Yeah.
Those white fins, just give them away.
I remember being so proud of myself 3-4 years ago out there. And like I say, Dan and I have never done good in that tournament. It definitely has always been our worst tournament. So, but I love fishing it, but we've done all right pre-fishing. But a couple years ago, I was running some long rods out the side of the boat with no lead at all, just a pulling worm. And I stuck the rod probably a foot into the water. And a minute after I did that, I caught like a 28. I'm like, oh, man, Dan's not going to like this. I'm like, yeah, I was sticking my rod into the water. He's going to just laugh at me. But that's literally how I caught that fish. And because I was in some really nasty, snaggy stuff, and I was just trying to keep it about a foot under the water. And that was the way I was doing it, and it worked. And, of course, that area, I think we did actually pull in there on the first day and lost a really nice fish, like an over, and about 2 feet away from the point where you can net it. First 5 minutes of the tournament, and it popped off, and that is not the way you want to start. So it's like just all your hard work just swimming away like that. And when you're pulling a slow death, that happens. And I'm always so nervous when I'm doing that because of situations like that. But I don't know, man. There's guys out there that continually do well, but and I like fishing that tournament, but man, there's one certain bite that if ever produces itself, I feel real comfortable doing it, but it just never seems to happen. And that's the open water suspended bite out there. If that ever goes, and like I hope it will, I feel pretty comfortable doing that. But
and I don't think you're wrong in that. I think this year you're probably going to find them up in the weeds like they did last year. I don't think the water temps are going to be real conducive to the suspended bite. But
so don't waste my time. And then when the tournaments, so when Dave Harrow wins the bite on a suspended bite,
yeah, you can blame me. Yeah. No, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you're going to go out and you're going to find something. Okay, go back to that one you were just talking about. So was that a repeatable pattern? Did you guys do anything other than the one fish?
Man, it's been so long ago. All I can remember is losing that fish like 2 feet away from the net. I think we may have lost another one too later. So it was one of those you just look at each other like, man. So, I mean, literally, Potholes has been my worst tournament. Like, if you look through the years, we're in the top half. I think there's only been one time, and it was when do you remember that one year when we had to put it like later in the year, like September or something like that?
Yep.
We got second out there, and that was open water all by myself. So that was the only time we've done good out there. Whenever I go back and play in the trees and the brush, I just get frustrated. But
well, the thing about it out there is that when you look at it, especially if you're driving out through there, I mean, what is it that you're looking for? Because a lot of it all looks the same.
Exactly.
So you're trying to pinpoint, okay, what am I trying to separate from all of this? Because there's a ton of room out there when the water's high. I mean, you can go for miles and looking at, bushes and weeds. And the one thing I usually look for is some sort of a water source coming in. If I can find a good water source coming in, I can find good green cabbage weed and something that's adjacent to deeper water, then that's usually where I find my fish. I've never won potholes, but I'm usually up there at least in the top 10. We've had a couple, 3, 5, 8s. And like I said, that's usually when it's first part of May, and that's what I'm looking for. When you talked about going out there in September, we've done really good out there in September because the water's low, the temperatures are high, and you'll catch them on that suspended bite. It's a whole lot similar to what you're doing up there in Banks Lake in the summertime.
Right.
So, but again, I'm kind of excited to go out because last year I was really disappointed because, the areas that I usually fish, I couldn't get into. They weren't producing, and we ended up basically just pulling planer boards and crankbaits along with the rest of everybody else. And I think the people that won it were casting into the cabbage weeds.
I can't remember who won last year. Who was it?
I don't remember either, but just my recollection was that they were basically bass fishing and were catching walleye. So
I think it was Dave Harrow.
Was it?
I think it was. I know that he won 2 tournaments last year, and I think they were back to, I think it was Dave. I think he's won the last 3 tournaments he's fished.
Let me see if I can look it up.
I think it was Dave.
Let's see. That would be.
Hey, while you're looking that up, I'll be back in 1 minute.
Okay. Was that one a away tournament last year?
I can't remember. Was it Dave that won last year?
Well, I don't remember if he won it, but I couldn't remember if it was a weigh-in tournament or was it a fish donkey?
I don't think it was fish donkey. I think it was a weigh-in.
No. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was Dave. You can't find it?
No, I can't find it.
Okay, well, let's just say it was Dave. I'm pretty sure it was. I think that he won both of those tournaments over in that area. We didn't do squat. I remember that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I believe we caught some fish. We just couldn't get the right ones. We caught a lot of flipping trout. I can tell you that. If it was a trout tournament, I think we would have been okay.
Well, apparently I'm nowhere near the right spot because I don't think I've ever caught a trout out there.
Oh, geez.
I wouldn't admit to it if I did.
Well, you know what? I think at one point in time, I asked you what we should name this podcast, right? And I said something about Confessions of a Fish Addict. So there you go. There's my confession. I was catching trout out there, and I mean, they were big. They were probably 4 or 5 pound at least.
And you caught some nice walleye too. So that's what you look for is trout.
Yeah, no, not really. But I was trying to put a skin on them, but it wouldn't work.
Did you place high last year?
No, I don't think so. I think we were probably mid-pack.
I think we had a big turnout last year. I think there was actually the best turnout of the year was that tournament. I feel like it was like in the 60s or something.
It might have been. Been. It's terrible, man. My memory is getting horrible. But, as far as that goes, it seems like last year and this year we're starting out the same way. Just for whatever reason, I can't seem to get out of the middle of the pack. I don't know what the heck I'm doing wrong, man. So
yeah, no, I've been getting my teeth kicked in this year, but that's the way she goes, man. It's a cruel world. Typically, you get to see the glory once or twice a year, and then the rest of it is back to reality. So I've been in reality all year so far. And potholes, like I say, has never done us well. So, I'm not too confident going there. But I really like fishing that tournament, but, and then after that we got Banks, and that'll be interesting. Technically that's my home water. I live half an hour from Banks, but I very rarely fish it anymore. And neither does Dan, but, we won that one. So it's all good.
Yeah. You got it in the bag.
Yeah.
No problem.
That was pretty cool. The year that we won it. It's already been 4 years now, but, I'd love to talk about that because you want to talk about a tournament where everything went the way you'd hoped. We were, on the first day, we could have quit an hour into it. Matter of fact, we went and weighed in. George wasn't even ready yet, but we got a 30-incher that took the crankbait pretty deep, had the whole crank in its mouth, and so it was bleeding. And I said, we need to run in just to be safe and weigh that fish in. And we already had. It was the craziest thing. We had our 6 fish limit, and they were perfect slot fish, like 22 to 23 and a half inch fish in the first 45 minutes. And we were pulling planer board mass that year. And the first 3 fish Dan caught while he was like putting his clip on to send his line out. And he said, fish on. I thought he was joking the first time and the second time. The third time, like, good Lord. So we caught our 6 fish. We had like 22, 24 pounds in the first 45 minutes. And everybody saw us where we were, the people that, were in that bay, and we left. So everybody's like, what the hell? Because we had a perfect 23, 4-pound bag, and we just bailed out of there. And we pulled into our big fish spot and instantly caught a 30-incher. So you want to talk about, yeah, man, it was like, okay. And day 2, we had 0 fish until about 11 o'clock. So you want to talk about stressing. And here's a funny little tidbit to that tournament. So once we finally gave up on our day 1, that was like taking candy from a baby, of course we were being stubborn, like what the hell, same conditions, whatever, they just weren't there. So I told Dan, I said, all right, let's head to Devil's Punch Bowl. And I told him, I said, hey, well, I pre-fished on the south end and was pulling cranks. And I said, let's just start on the south end. And I took a little 5-minute cat nap, pretty frustrated, because here we are I don't think we were day 1 leaders, but I think we might have been. I think we were in second on day 1. And
I've seen you do that a couple times there, Jed.
What's that?
Take a nap.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was in charge of the boat that day. So I took a little 5-minute cat nap on the ride over. And so I wake up and I told him, I said, let's start on the south side and pull cranks. Well, we're on the other end. And I'm like, whatever. A mistake, right? Put our cranks out and caught 4 nice fish instantly. So it was like the greatest mistake, like, just luck, I guess. I don't know what to call it. But then we were still struggling. I think we had 4 fish. None of them were overs, but they were good slots, 22s, 23s. And I think we had 2 hours left. And we ran over to, what the hell is it called? I hardly fish banks anymore, so I'm forgetting some of the landmarks. We went around Steamboat and went out towards the other boat launch that's on the north side of the lake there.
Over on Parker?
Yep. And got a perfect 25 for our 5th fish. We still needed 1 more. And there was about 45 minutes left. And when Gordon Steinmetz died, I'd given him a bunch of crankbaits when I moved out here, ones that I used back in the Midwest, and they were producing out here. So once he passed away, Marge gave me some of these back, and I'd been saving them. And it was so cool because I'll tell you the color, it was a yellow crankbait. And we were pulling all day. We were pulling purple and perch colored. So we weren't pulling yellow. But this was Gordon's crankbait. I put it on the line. I sent it out on the planer board mast. Got it out about 20 feet. Put the rod in the rod holder. And I saw that thing like a bowstring just snap. And it was a 28.
Nice.
Instantly. So old Gordon was looking out on that one.
Yeah, that was meant to be that year for you.
Absolutely. That was our 6th fish, and we barely won it. I think it was Mike Cook was like right on us. He had a great day too, but I think we had like a 26-pound bag one day and a 28 the second day. Literally the best 2 days I've ever had on Banks Lake. So we got that ring, and that was the one that obviously I wanted to win because Gordon was a real close friend of mine. Before I moved out here, I would come out from Minnesota and fish out here. And the last time before I moved out here, he'd let me stay at his place and I'd go fish all day, all night, come in, go to sleep in their spare bedroom. And then I'd wake up, some nights I would sleep all night or fish all night, and I'd come in, get a couple hours sleep, and then I would go into the house and talk to Gordon. He'd want to know how my night went. And, that was probably a year before he passed away. So those are cool memories, but yeah, that was pretty special to put his crankbait out there and win the tournament. It's actually sitting right over here. I'm not going to show you.
Yeah,
I might show you, but I'm not going to show everybody.
Yeah, okay. We'll keep it that way.
But it's actually sitting right over here in my office. So, and I haven't used it since. So,
well, I know it's pretty cool because I know that one meant a lot to you. I mean, we've talked about that before, and what Gordon meant to you, and the fact that you like your old boat, you used to have that deal that you had made for the tournament, that was on your boat. And so, I mean, I was pulling for you that year because I was hoping you were going to win with where you were at. So
yeah, it was good when everything worked out. And boy, he made us suffer because that bite was not there for day 2. And that just goes to show you that, it's tough to have the same spots, even if the weather doesn't change, man, it's really rare. It seems like to have the same spot put out the same fish, so you really have to adapt. And there was a little luck involved with us adapting, I guess, but man, that was so cool when I threw that crank of his on and we won it on that fish. And I tell you what, that was the most nerve-wracking fish because it came in nice and easy. It presented itself. It was flat calm. We saw it, and we saw it was a pig, and it was like an 8-9 pounder. And right when it got to the point where Dan could try to net it, it went straight down, and it took a good minute before it came up. And so, man, oh my God,
that's.
You talk about blood pressure. But once we got it in that boat, man, it was like, okay, that's got to be it. I think we got it.
What's crazy too is the fact that, it seems like I can go out and pre-fish and I won't lose a damn fish. Right?
Oh no. Yeah. You don't need a net. Yeah.
No. And then you get into tournament and, it seems like you get a good smash on a crankbait. The board goes back, reel it in, get the board off, and you come up and you can see that thing's just hanging by one hook, and it never seems to fail. That's when we seem to lose them.
Yep.
I mean, it just drives me nuts.
It's crazy how pre-fishing, they don't come off. Like last year, the Banks Lake tournament, we had it in July, and we had 2 of them last year. We had a 1-dayer in July.
Yeah.
And I actually caught my biggest Banks Lake fish the day before the tournament. Didn't have a net with me, which I never bring a net when I'm just fishing. And it was 33.5 inches. And it was the biggest cluster, me trying to – I actually turned my video on my cell phone because I wanted to just show what I had on there because I didn't think I was going to be able to reach over and grab it. And because it had one hook in it. And so then I set my phone down, and you can hear me like twice trying to grab this thing, and the fish is bouncing off the boat. I think the first time I tried to tail grab it and then put a hand under the chin, and I bounced it off the boat. It never came off. And I finally got it in the boat. I'm like, yeah, that would never happen in a tournament.
Nope.
But no, it stayed nice and hooked, and yeah, so that was just the way it goes, man. But that's part of the fun, the nervousness you get, I guess, fighting the fish, because the walleyes aren't known for fighting, but you can get some that will fight, and it's probably going to be one that matters, because it seems like every time I have one on that really matters, it gives me hell, but we all live for that adrenaline rush that, happens during that point. It's just crazy how your body can go from, it's like bow hunting. I used to bow hunt a lot. The adrenaline rush you get from hunting.
0 to 100 like that.
Yeah. I mean, so those are the moments you want. I feel sorry for the, I've yet to lose a big fish when it mattered. It's going to happen at some point, and that's going to suck. But so far, I've been lucky in those scenarios. But the adrenaline you get while you're in the moment, that's the fun part. And whether it goes good or bad, I mean, obviously you want to have more good than bad, but you're going to get plenty of that go bad.
You're just not looking forward to that kick in the nuts when you see it swim away.
No.
Yeah. So I got something to show you and see what everybody thinks about it. I was kind of had this idea about making some sweatshirts. What do you think of that?
Hey, I'm up for any. Yeah. So just so everybody knows, Lonnie and I are paying for this out of our pocket. So obviously any support we could get would be great, but I don't mind dishing a few bucks out to talk about this either. But yeah, if we can get into something like that, so it's, not costing us out of the pocket, that'd be a good thing. Yeah.
So basically all these are going to say the same thing. Do you even, so like that one, swim bait, the last one was cast. Let's see, which else do I have here? Take that one off. So just a little something, little saying on there. It just cracks me up because you get people that always say, do you even hunt, bro? Do you even shoot, bro? So just kind of came up with that idea. So if anybody's interested, they could throw it in the comments on Facebook or on YouTube or something like that, and we can see where it goes.
Right. And we're just getting rolling with this, with me taking off for the last couple of weeks. There was just no possibility of doing anything. I had no cell signal where I was staying out there. But we're going to try to have a recap of every tournament, and we still got a couple guys that did good in the previous tournaments that we wanted to do one more practice podcast here to get our bearings. And so we're going to start having some appearances by guys that have either won the previous tournaments or done well, and either get their lies or their truths, probably way more lies, but usually, like for instance, for myself, when you win a tournament, you're apt to at least talk a little bit. You might not give exact tactics, but you might give some depths and procedures that you used without spilling all the beans, because we all want to have a few secrets in our back pocket.
Well, sure. Yeah, well, you were kind of throwing me under the bus there about asking about potholes, and it hasn't even happened yet.
Well,
I see your sneaky attack.
I'll be shocked if I'm the one being interviewed.
That'd be cool. I mean, I'm all about it.
No, if I have to predict it, well, I know Brad Phillips always does good, but he's not fishing much. His kid's into baseball. But man, Sam Grant, he knows that body of water. Of course, Dave. Bill Harrison, he always does good out there. Jordan Reeder, I think they've won it. Him and his dad have won that one maybe twice. Yeah, Mark Olson, Shelby Ross, he guides out there. He's always in the top 10. So it'll be probably one of those, or it'll be some dark horse, can happen. Ron Charlton, if he's fishing it, him and Jason Bauer won it a couple of years ago. We'll see. Yeah. Whoever wins it, we'll see if they're willing to train us on how to fish out there.
Yeah, we'll see. I know just one time I'd like to get one on my home water, whether it be Moses Lake, potholes, or banks, but I don't know. We'll see.
Well, here you go. Here's your next chance.
Yeah. We'll see how it works. Cool. So maybe next week, I know Jordan was pretty excited about getting on, so maybe we can have him on. And I know you talked to Matt Brown, so
yeah, I'm sure those guys are, like I say, those tournaments have been almost 2 months since it happened. So we'll just see if they got the time and the technology to, it seems like we're getting this dialed in at least. It seems like it's working.
for whatever reason, I don't know why, I'm plugged into the internet, so I'm not even on Wi-Fi, but for whatever reason, it keeps telling me my signal's low. So I know I'm going to end up with another free screen or something like I did last week, and I don't know what the heck's going on with it. So,
is your dog in there licking a bowl right now?
No, he's chewing on his bone.
Okay, well, I can hear
What
it.
can I say? He's 11 months old, man. I mean, just for him to sit still for an hour is a miracle.
Yeah, I hear some gnawing going on there. Speaking of that,
Yeah.
my dog on the road trip, I gave him a bone before I left, and it was right from the butcher, and that resulted in not a favorable road trip for a dog that never has problems in the truck. He was staring at me constantly on the drive back, saying, "Let me out right now." And there was the first time I had nowhere to pull over, and he was just looking at me like, "Hey,
Come on,
man,
dude.
right now." And I had nowhere to pull over. So,
Oh no.
yeah,
Dude, that sounds like your trip was. Yeah, you had a rough trip, man.
it was an adventure. They all can't be all roses and potpourri.
No. I hear you. Cool. All right, man. Well, let's wrap her up.
All right. Well, we'll see you. Hopefully, I'll try to shoot for Wednesday next week. It just kind of depends on my work schedule, but we'll try to do another one next week.
Yep. Sounds good, Chad. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you.
Bye.